The Fear Street trilogy had to overcome some hurdles. This trio of Netflix films, which are directed by Leigh, Janiak, and are loosely based on R.L. Stine's young adult Fear Street novels, had a very troubled post-production. See, the movies were filmed back to back to back and were produced by 20th Century Fox with the intention of releasing all the films in theaters within months of each other, but this did not happen. After the Fear Street crew had finished shooting in mid-2019, 20th Century Fox was purchased by Disney, which was an event that shrouded the entire planned trilogy beneath a cloud of uncertainty. After all, Disney is known for its more family-friendly fare, and the R-rated and gory Fear Street movies were at odds with the House of Mouse's modus operandi, and despite being completed, the movie's fates were up in the air. Add on the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic derailed the entire theatrical distribution model, and there was a legit possibility that these movies wouldn't be released in 2021. A chance that these movies would still be stuck behind red tape, which would have been unfortunate for everyone involved. Thankfully, though, Netflix inevitably acquired the Fear Street trilogy. Snatching them from Disney's clutches, the company released the movies over the course of a few weeks in the summer to its binge-tended audience, and they were a big success in terms of streaming metrics, something that I'm personally really happy about, mostly because this trilogy is really good. In fact, the Fear Street movies have quite a bit going for them. They feature likable characters, an adorable queer romance, a fun narrative with a lot of heart, depthful thematic purpose, and a cohesive story that pays homage to classic horror films and slasher films in particular. Taking place over 3 time periods, the films run the horror gambit, mixing a slasher story and a witch persecution narrative in a way that is both thrilling and entertaining, and as a result, the Fear Street trilogy is definitely worth watching. It is quite good. This quality starts with its story. Beginning with Fear Street Part 1, 1994, we are introduced to the high school student Dina and the violence-prone town of Shadyside. Yes, it is really named Shadyside. Subtlety is as overrated as a Chick-fil-A sandwich, so just roll with it. As a town, Shadyside is steeped in superstitious hocus-pocus. According to a local legend, Shadyside was cursed in the 1600s by a witch named Sarah Fear, because once again, subtlety. Every few years, the supposed curse causes an otherwise good citizen of Shadyside to turn into a mass murderer, and according to legend, the only way to lift the curse is to find the witch's hidden grave and reunite her severed hand with her body, or at least that's how it goes in the story. Admittedly, our main character Dina views the Sarah Fear myth as a load of nonsense. From Dina's point of view, the curse was fabricated by a town coping with a reality where homicidal rampages happen in abundance, and in that regard, she believed that the curse was just an excuse for bad human behavior, nothing more. But Dina's tune changes when the plot springs into motion. When Dina's ex-girlfriend Sam discovers Sarah Fear's body, it causes many of Shadyside's past cursed killers to rise up from the dead and hunt Dina, her brother Josh, Sam, and their friends Kate and Simon down. And from there, the group needs to find a way to return these spirits to the grave. No pressure. Following that film, Fear Street Part 2, 1978 follows 2 troubled sisters, Cindy and Ziggy Berman, who are attending a Shadyside summer camp. At the camp, a Jason Voorhees type of slasher terrorizes the campers, and Cindy and Ziggy must find a way to stop the killer as they learn more and more details and reveals that fundamentally change how we see the narrative and mystery revolving around the witch, her curse, and Shadyside in general. And finally, the trilogy ends with Fear Street Part 3, 1666, where we learn about the witch's origin story before returning to 1994 to wrap up the narrative in a way that is very satisfying. And yes, I know that this description is kind of vague, but no spoilers here. The Fear Street trilogy is a lot of fun, and it is more entertaining than it is scary. While there are some thrills, the movies are character-based more so than pants-shittingly terrifying, and honestly, the movies are all the better for it. They are a lot of fun. If anything, the movies hit a similar entertaining and horror sweet spot that the first season of Stranger Things did, a series that the Fear Street trilogy has a lot in common with. Like Stranger Things, Fear Street stars younger people. Hell, some of the actors were even in Stranger Things. The movies are set in a nostalgic portrayal of the past. Trilogy is on Netflix. Director Leigh Janiak is married to Stranger Things co-creator Ross Duffer, and the movies feature a fun yet thrilling tone. Sure, Fear Street differentiates itself from Stranger Things because it's more adult, i.e. it has more gore, its inspirations are from more mature movies, and it actually shows characters physically going to Pound Town. Oh yeah. But the Fear Street trilogy's thrills remain playful more so than horrifying. It has suspense that is motivated by the fact that we are emotionally attached to these characters, especially for those of us who enjoy a good sapphic romance, and it has a lot of heart. Like Stranger Things Season 1, it is quite an enjoyable experience. The Fear Street movies are additionally imbued with narrative and thematic purpose. The films have a lot of themes about class, race, and queer identity. See, the citizens of Shadyside are racially diverse and are generally lower income, especially compared to the neighboring town of Sunnyvale, which is whiter and more economically prosperous. And oh yes, you'd better believe that the movies play up a narrative angle regarding a social and racial hierarchy where Sunnyvale views themselves as superior to the supposedly inherently violent and morally impure Shadyside, which is a notion that is clearly steeped in both racist and homophobic dog whistles. And with that, the movies bludgeon the narrative point regarding the disparity between the two sides of town with the efficacy of a sledgehammer. And due to this, the Fear Street trilogy has a lot of relevant thematic weight to it. Sure, the racial, queer, and class thematic undertones are far from subtle, but the rivalry between Shadyside and Sunnyvale is very effective and has a lot of relatable themes in regards to race, class, and queer identity. It works here. Furthermore, the Shadyside vs. Sunnyvale dynamic works from a nuts and bolts narrative perspective as well. See, over these three movies, Shadyside gets a bad reputation, whether it be because of the witch's curse or the fact that Sunnyvale is filled with a bunch of assholes. Dina, Sam, Josh, the Berman sisters, and the rest of Shadyside all feel like underdogs, especially the queer lovebirds Dina and Sam. And due to this, we really sympathize with these characters, mostly because due to where they live, who they love, or their own backgrounds, they receive more bullshit than an early 2000s nu metal band. Though to be fair, some of the nu metal bands back then deserved it. And because of this, we really want to see these characters succeed. They've experienced and actively endure so much bullshit, and we, the audience, just want them to prevail. We are clearly emotionally invested in them. Admittedly, the Fear Street movies do have some flaws. The movies are a bit too on the nose with its themes, and I know that I've said subtlety is overrated, but some of the blunt narrative and thematic presentation can get a bit silly at times. Additionally, the movies rely a bit too much on older, well-known rock music to establish a period setting. In fact, the movies essentially use the soundtrack to do most of the heavy lifting when cementing the time periods that these films take place in, which can feel overbearing at times. But then again, I don't exactly mind, mostly because I actually like older 90s rock music. I mean, White Zombie's More Human Than Human is a monster jam, and the filmmakers clearly agree, so I can't really be too upset about this, or any of the trilogy's problems for that matter, because the movie's flaws pale in comparison to the overall quality of this trilogy. Because at the end of the day, the Fear Street movies are quite good. As horror films, they are a hell of a lot of fun, they offer some thematic food for thought, the characters are likable, the mystery revolving around the witch is engrossing, it's really gay, and it has a lot of heart. And through it all, Fear Street is an enjoyable horror trilogy that is worth binging. And sure, it may have had a tumultuous post-production because Disney, but the movies did make it to release, and I am very grateful for that. See ya. And with that, that was the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like rating and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell so that you're notified for whenever I release a new video. Also, leave a comment telling me what you think about Fear Street and horror movies in general. Additionally, please consider checking out my Patreon page. The link is in the description. And speaking of Patreon, I just want to thank my patrons, especially my high tier ones, and David Devlin, Mom, and Morgan. Thank you so much for supporting what I do. Love y'all.